Just listen.
Greetings everyone, welcome to Macro Talk. It is Tuesday, March the 11th, all day today, 2025. What do you think of these nice longer days? Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It's been sunny and pleasant here. It's getting ready to get cold again, but the last few days have been lovely. I hope it's nice where you are. We're talking about short focus today, about what it is, and specifically how you would pick a lens to act as a tube lens if you wanted to try short focus. I'll tell you a little bit about what it is, why you might want to try it, why it's useful, and all of the reasons why most of the lenses that you're going to pick up and try are not going to work. And I'll go into all of that when we get there. A couple of things I want to tell you about first. Thursday, I am getting ready in some form or fashion to release the G code, the 3D print code, for a couple of things that you know I've been working on. The first one, actually, let me see. Yes, here they are. The first one is this delightful little reimagining of the birefringence crystal photography viewer thing. I completely redid it in a much more compact form. Absolutely love it. I've printed up 4 of these for people that are waiting on them. A couple of prize winners are getting one of these, and they're really nice. I'm very, very happy with them, and I am going to release the code in case you want to make one. And on Thursday, I'm going to show you how you make it once you've got the code. I'll show you how you put one together and all the things you have to think about. Second, people have asked me about this, the focus block. People are thinking about converting their own old broken microscope to use, and want to know how this is put together. So I'm going to cover that on Thursday as well. It'll be fairly straightforward, but it'll be a lot of fun, I think. Now, I have been thinking about this whole process of making these things and how much time it takes, how much effort it takes to get these things made. And I'm not sure many of you are going to want to do that, to be honest. It's a real pain. I mean, the design part takes a lot longer than the building of it, but still, you've got to order a bunch of stuff and put it all together and make it work. I was thinking that some of you might just rather buy one, in which case I think I might just sell you one. I'm thinking of doing 3 different things. One is just selling these things completed, just like this, ready to use. And they have a light in them and everything. You just turn it on, put your sample in there, and you can photograph it. The other option is I'm thinking of maybe selling a kit that has all the bits you would otherwise have to buy, and then you can just 3D print the file and put the kit together. And the third option is the DIY option, where I'm thinking about charging you anyway, just because. We'll talk about that on Thursday as well. But anyway, those things are in process. If you're looking for the after stack from last weekend, number 18, I have not had a chance to post it. I have been extremely busy the last 2 days. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Baconmeister was asking about the print files for these. They will be released. They will be released at some point. I'm not sure I'm going to release the Fusion 360 files, though. And that's just because they're incredibly long and involved, and they're full of mistakes. I fixed them all the mistakes, but I still don't want you to see them all. Unless I can figure out a way to get the mistakes out, I may just keep the Fusion file to myself. Okay, Saturday we have a Presume. It's the only one this month because I am going to be in Florida at the Florida, Convention of Camera Clubs, or very close to that, giving a couple of talks that week, and I won't be able to be on the Presume. So this will be the only one we have this Saturday, so please come. We'll do our usual thing, but there'll be probably some other surprises on Saturday. I think that's everything I had. Yes, I will be back, by the way, for the April Fool's Day macro talk, which is on Tuesday, April the 1st. So I hope to be back by then. You know, it's a long way from here to Tampa. A long way. It's like 9.5 inches on my map. and that corresponds to 2 days of driving. Anyway, did you know that you can buy surgical tubing, rubber tubing, in black? I didn't know that. I was so thrilled to find it. It looks a bit like licorice. This is what you use to preload this thing. But the flesh-colored tube didn't look very good on it. But I think this will. So there you go. That was just a bonus fact. So what we're talking about today is short focus. What is short focus, and why would you care about it? Short focus is a term we use when we're talking about using mostly infinity corrected microscope objective based macro photography setups. So it's high magnification stuff. And this whole topic, by the way, is probably not for the faint of heart and not for the beginner. But maybe you'll get something out of it anyway. It might be interesting to you. Short focus is where instead of using the standard 200 millimeter, in the case of Nikon, tube lens that is designed to function with the objectives that you're using, instead of using that, you use a shorter, hence the term short focus, a shorter tube lens focal length, usually around 100 to 135 millimeters. The reason you do that is by compacting the system down and moving the sensor closer to the tube lens, you get less magnification, which doesn't sound like a good thing, but in exchange you get more resolution because you're not changing the objective. The objective is still the same. You're just getting to get more resolution out of it at the expense of some magnification. And there are times when that is really, really a good thing to do. And you can turn your 10x infinity corrected microscope objective into an incredibly powerful 5x objective, or 6x objective in the case of 135 millimeter tube lens. It's just fantastic. Now, this all came about when Susan, our own Susan, told me about a lens that she had bought. This lens. It's a 100 millimeter f2.8 E. It's an E series lens from Nikon. And she wanted to know, as a 100 millimeter lens, how would this be as a tube lens? And I said, honestly, I don't know. I've never used it as a tube lens. Why don't you send it to me and I'll give it a bash? So that's what started this whole thing. I'll spoil the tension here by telling you that this may well be the worst tube lens I've ever used. And I'll show you why as we go through it. But it made me think everybody's probably got a 100 or 105 millimeter lens sitting around, and they're probably, well, maybe you haven't done it yet. After this, you'll probably be wondering, well, is that a good tube lens? Would that work for short focus? I'm going to tell you how to evaluate these lenses, and we'll use this one as an example, and I'll show you some of the pictures that I took with it. And you'll be able to, after this, be equipped to take any lens that you've got and try it for short focus and get a really good feel for whether or not it would be any good. And there are some things you can do before you even try to put it onto your rig that may save you the time of even trying, and I'll go through all of those things. So, a suitable lens. What is a suitable lens for a tube lens for short focus? Something that has a focal length about half of what you're regularly using. For most of us, that's 200 millimeters if we're using Mitutoyo or Nikon lenses. So 100 millimeters is right in the ballpark. And that will turn your 10x objective into a 5, or it'll turn your 20 into a 10, and so on. Now, a proper tube lens should be close to telecentric, as close to telecentric as possible, in order to take that parallel flux of light rays coming out of the objective and focus it onto your sensor. Now, a lot of the tube lenses we use are not telecentric, but they are close to it, at least from the perspective of the objective. And that is important, and we'll explain why that is in a minute. Good tube lenses are flat. meaning they project an image onto a flat surface where it's all in focus. If they had curvature of the field, if the lens was not flat field, then it would be presenting a in focus picture on a curved surface. And since we don't use curved surfaces on our sensors, it would mean the edges would be out of focus when the middle was in focus. And we're going to see that a lot tonight. So flat field is important for a tube lens. Now, tube lenses, if they're not good, will almost always cause some degree of chromatic aberration. And that's because the lenses have a very specific way of handling the different wavelengths of color. And when they're used as tube lenses, if they're not really well matched to the objective, it'll end up projecting the color into different planes, and you end up with fringing in high contrast areas. You know what all that is. The other thing is, if you mismatch your tube lens with the system, you often run out of light basically at the edges, and you get vignetting. And this is another thing we're going to see quite a bit with this lens. So one of the things that you do when you assess a lens to see if it's going to be any good as a tube lens is you get a feel for how telecentric it is. And one of the ways you can do that is by looking through the front of the lens at the entrance pupil. That's what you see when you look through the front of the lens. And you have to assess where it is in relation to the lens. Now, I don't think you can do it on television. Well, maybe you can to a degree. If I look into this lens, the aperture appears to be about twice the distance of the lens behind the lens. That's where my brain is telling me it is. It's very far outside of the physical lens. Now, for a lens to be a decent tube lens, you want that entrance pupil to be much closer to you. You want it to be up close to you, even inside the lens. That is generally going to give you a much more accurate tube lens that will give you a good resolution of the image that the objective is providing to it. When the entrance pupil is all the way back there, it tends to be disastrous, as we're going to see. The problem with tube lenses is if they are not perfect for the application, they reintroduce aberrations that otherwise your objective would have taken care of. When you use a great tube lens that is matched well to the objective you're using, something like the Raynox DCR 150 or the ITL 200 from Thorlabs, or the 200mm f4 micro Nikon lens. These are fantastic tube lenses, and there is little to no aberration that's introduced back into the picture. This is not the case, as I'll show you. So if you are using a tube lens that does work, the pictures can be even more amazing than using the right tube lens with your regular magnification 5x, for example. The Mitutoyo 5x with a good tube lens will give you some really stunningly sharp pictures. But the 10x Mitutoyo on short focus can give you some even more remarkable pictures because of that added resolution. Now, where were we? We're talking about the entrance pupil. When the pupil is shifted like it is in this lens, way outside of the lens, it means that off-axis light is going to be striking the lens at angles that it's not designed to take, and it causes field curvature and astigmatism. It just reintroduces all of the aberrations that the objective has taken care of for us. So Uneven illumination is another problem, as I mentioned, and vignetting is a huge problem with this. Let me show you what the first picture I took. Well, no, I'll tell you what, let me first describe how I set this test platform up. I tried to do it on a horizontal setup, but I was using fairly high magnifications and some heavy equipment, as you'll see, some long lenses, and my system just wasn't up for it. It really needed to be done vertically, so I did set up a vertical platform for this. I rather like it and think I actually may end up using this a little more. Let me see if I can find the pictures. Okay, they're on the wrong screen, but give me just a second and I'll get them over. What I used was my Z8, and I used the stack shot just to have good tight control of the lens position, and I just really threw this together in a relatively short period of time today. I think you can see that now. And this is a view from above to give you some idea of what it looked like. I'm using my big, heavy Manfrotto-like studio camera stand, onto which I have mounted everything vertically. Very, very happy with the actual layout of the thing. Let me show you a couple more pictures of it, and we'll go from there. This is a little bit easier to see, I think. I'm sorry it's so busy. I didn't have a chance to set up the studio for taking pictures of it, but this was what I was photographing, was a large wafer, silicone wafer with Microsoft chips on it. And yeah, most of these were pictures that I'm going to show you were single shots, and they were shot with the Nikon CFI Plan 10X, short focused. This was in order to give you some comparison shots, by the way. This is the setup on the 200mm f4. This is not short focus. This is regular long focus for this objective. But you'll see when we look at the pictures, I'll explain why I took these particular ones. I'm going to show you the short focus setup now. Or maybe I'm not. It's in here somewhere. Actually, it's not. I'll show you another picture of the rig though while I'm looking. All right, so it's very, very basic, and it was useful to have a vertical rig for the evenness of lighting on this platform too. I don't think I do have the lens, but I'm going to be showing it to you in person. So let me show you the first picture that we have. Now, I'm going to be completely frank here that I don't think my table, even though I measured it with an electronic protractor at all four corners and measured the camera stand and everything else, everything was in a 1/10 of a degree of perpendicular. Yet even with my good tube lens, I was having some inconsistency in focal planes. But I'm going to explain the difference between what we're seeing there, because of the table not being flat, is what I'm getting at, and what we're seeing in these pictures, which is field curvature. So this is one of the best pictures that I got from the Nikon 100mm E lens, and it was in the forward orientation, which is where I started testing it. And there are some areas of real sharpness in here. They're not central, but the edges are just disastrous. You can see all kinds of curvature, field curvature at the edges, with this barrel distortion on all four axes, and softening right as you get anywhere outside of dead center of the frame. It softens up and becomes awful at the perimeter, and there's no light at the perimeter either. I was shooting with the lens which I had checked with the camera, focus to infinity, and it did indeed focus to infinity. Let me say something else about that while we're at it. This lens is incredibly sharp as a 100mm telephoto lens. it is really nice. It's a beautiful manual lens with lots of character. It took really nice pictures. It's just not a short focus relay lens, as you can see. It has all manner of problems going on. In fact, just about every problem you can describe. Poor illumination, field curvature, a bizarre kind of perspective shift, and uneven focus from field curvature. So there is no edge sharpness. I'll show you another one of these images. There is no sharpness at the edges in any of them that I could find. And we were set up in the simplest way with the lens forward. In fact, let me just take a second to explain that to you. With the lens forward, all I did was put it on the camera, because with an adapter, this is a focusable lens, so I could focus it to infinity without having to add any distance, which you shouldn't if you don't need to. You're using this as a lens. Focus to infinity, and I had my objective right in front of the front element of the lens. And even so, there was some softening and internal reflections from somewhere. I'm not sure where that was coming from. It's a little hard to figure it out because there was so much wrong with these pictures. While I'm doing that, let me just grab another one to show you. Yeah, this is probably a better example of how in the dead center these pictures could be quite nice. Let me see. I can't enlarge that, I don't think, or can I? Maybe so. There we go. So there was relatively little chromatic aberration, though this is not a good picture to look for that on because of the darkness of it. But you can certainly see how, as you get towards the corners, everything just goes down the drain. The next thing I did, of course, was flip the lens around to see if there was any improvement in the vignette or in the softness outside of the center. And well, there are some potential advantages to flipping the lens around, as you know. In doing this, I was hoping that we would improve the location of the entrance pupil, for one thing, because with telephoto lenses, the entrance pupil shifts forward when it's normally oriented, and that's not what we want. We want it to shift back towards the lens, and reversing the lens can sometimes do that, but it really didn't in this case. In fact, when I flipped it around, let me show you the next picture, it got considerably worse. Just really bad. Again, the sharpest part, the brightest part, is not even in the center of the lens, and I don't know what that is. That might be, I'm willing to admit that might be my 20x Mitutoyo, because I believe I may have delaminated that when I dropped it the other day. I didn't drop it very far, but it landed on its side, and ever since then, it's been even dodgier than it was before. So we shouldn't put too much stock in these pictures. Needless to say, in reverse, this does not improve. Sometimes when you reverse a lens, like when you reverse the Raynox, it gives you less field curvature. It gives you a flatter picture so that there's sharpness all the way across the field, and that's nice. It generally improves any off-axis sharpness. And also, flipping some of these lenses in reverse will give you less other aberrations, reduced chromatic aberrations, for example. There's even a chance that when you flip the lens backwards, you get more light in. Which might not at first make sense, but when you shift the entrance pupil, it allows for more light into the optical column. So it's definitely worth trying, but in this case, it was definitely a disaster. The exit pupil of a telephoto lens like this is really not designed to project into another optical system when it's reversed. Well, I'm not sure any of them are, but this one is just particularly poorly matched for that. So you get all these aberrations in vignetting when there's a mismatch between the exit pupils. The it was so obvious looking at it that the light fall off is kind of like the aperture in the lens is designed to work with the lens forward, and when you turn it around backwards, you can get limited light getting through, more limited light getting through than if it was back. If you just consider where the lens is in relation, where the aperture is in relation to the glass, it will make sense. So it doesn't always work to do that. With the simple lenses, like we're going to be talking about an Olympus bellows lens in a little bit, the 135mm. That's one that does work well reversed, as does the Raynox DCR 150. Now, you could use the Raynox DCR 250 as a relay lens with the objective, and it will work great at short focus. Just not so with this one. So there are lenses that you can use. So just because you have a lens that is shorter than the 200mm you normally use does not mean you're necessarily going to get any improvement in your picture. You may just get less magnification and a horrible picture. That doesn't even take into account how difficult these things can be to mount sometimes, depending on. Now, a Nikon like this was a piece of cake to mount because it's got an F bayonet on one side and a 52mm filter thread on the front. So putting it forward or backwards was 2 minutes work. But some of the odder lenses can be a pain to set up. So if you have a lens and you want to test whether or not reversing it is going to help you, then and you have a 100mm lens that you're testing out as a tube lens, try reversing it, set it to infinity on the filter, on the focus ring as you normally would, and put the microscope objective on as close to the lens as you can. Without touching the lens, obviously, and just shoot a flat field straight down on a wafer or a test slide or anything that you can be pretty sure is absolutely flat, and just take a picture, then flip the lens around into normal orientation, and with everything else the same, take a picture of that, and yeah, you'll get a good idea whether or not your lens is going to work better in reverse or forward. Now, what would be a more suitable lens than this for short focus? Because there are a handful of lenses that we know are good. There is the Nikon Rayfact. I'm sure you're familiar with it. We talked about it before. The 105mm f2.8. It's also the EL Nikon enlarger lens, 105 f2.8. Fantastic for short focus. It's gosh, I'm not sure what the focal length is, but I mean I'm not sure what the cost of that lens is. I haven't seen one in a while, but I'm sure the Rayfac's very expensive. Mitutoyo makes a tube lens that I think is available in 100mm. I'm not sure. I need to check that. But the old EL Nikon 105mm can usually be picked up fairly cheap. I looked that up the other day and jotted it down. Can't remember what I said, but it's probably an experiment worth trying, just like this one was. Honestly, you'll read that every now and again you'll be surprised. I don't think I've ever been surprised. That almost every lens I check as a tube lens is rubbish. One possible exception was the Nisi diopters that I checked. They weren't good, but they weren't terrible either. The short one. So you never know. It's probably worth giving it a try. So if you have a lens that's sitting on your shelf and you want to give it a shot as a tube lens with your microscope objectives, make sure first of all that it's about the right focal length, and that you have a nice big aperture on it. f2.8 would be nice. And if you can get a diagram of the lens, of the lens elements, it's worth looking at that too. So 100 millimeters as a focal length is going to give you half the magnification, and the lower the f number, the bigger the aperture and the more light you're going to get in. So that will help, I think, with all of the lighting issues that we see with this lens. So figure out where your entrance and exit pupils are, like we talked about, by looking through the lens from the front and by looking through it from the back. And that will give you a good idea of where the apparent opening is. That's all you're looking at, is where it appears that the opening in the lens is. And you do the same, flipping it around and looking through from the rear. And you just measure how far from the end of the lens does the image appear to be. The reason is the far forward entrance pupil that's either inside the body of the lens or ahead of it can cause these flat field dependent aberrations like the curvature we saw with this lens. If you have a recessed exit pupil, that means inside the lens, it can cause some vignetting too. So you got to be careful. It's a right balance. For a relay lens, the entrance pupil should be near the front of the lens and the exit pupil should be near the rear. Make sense? Yeah, so do that, and then test for vignetting rather than looking at a slide. Just looking at a photograph. Test the vignetting just by putting your camera against a bright background. Just point it at a bright background so that you can see any darkening. You might as well know what exactly you're going to be getting before you start looking at actual subjects. Otherwise, it might drive you crazy. Sometimes the vignetting just starts out by making it look out of focus if it's subtle. But it's good to look at it against white paper and see just how bad it is. And you can see where the sharp circle of light is too, and it'll give you some idea what you can expect. If your image circle doesn't cover your sensor, then you're either going to have to use a smaller sensor or find another lens. So the smaller the image circle, of course, the darker the vignette's going to be. APS-C cameras, I did not try this with an APS-C camera. I don't think it would have made any difference. The vignetting is so bad that I think it would have been a problem there too. To check for field curvature, just use any flat surface again at a fixed distance and make sure you're perpendicular to it. And if the edges go out of focus on both sides or all four corners, you know you're talking about field curvature. Now, in some of these pictures, let me show you a couple more. In some of these pictures that I took, you'll see, even with the good lens, that there was some out of focus. In fact, let me show you one of those. There was some areas that were out of focus at the edges, and you might be tempted to think that, oh, well, you can see that there's a loss of focus down here. This progressed across the image as I racked focus in a line. That is highly suggestive of the surface you're shooting on being out of flat. It's tilted, and my focal plane shifted as I moved the camera up and down, as opposed to the focus spreading out in all directions or closing in on the center. You if you see the focus change as it sweeps across the page, that is almost certainly going to be because your table's wonky. It was with these anyway. Let me find a couple of the Yeah, here's just another step in that series of pictures. As I move the focus, it starts to drop out of focus and it progresses across the diagonal. And it does turn out that there is about a half a degree of slope in that table. But this is, even though it's slightly out of focus on the side, my bad. This is what a, a good relay lens looks like at short focus with DCR. Let me see, DCR 250 and the Nikon CFI Plan 10X. And if you're wondering what this is down here, this haziness, that was entirely my fault. I had the one of the lights without a diffuser on it bouncing right up into the objective. When I added a diffuser, all of this went away, and it was very dependent on the position of the lights too. I was in such a hurry I didn't think about putting proper diffusion on my test bed, which is silly. It got worse in this picture. But my goodness, the short focus really is beautifully sharp in the center. This one, let me see, got a couple more of these. I think there's, I was looking for chromatic aberration in this one. This is with the Nikon F4 and with the 10X, just to show that the objective by itself is pretty sharp on the right tube lens. So comparing that to what we saw first, yeah, it's pretty marked difference. But check for field curvature then is the next thing that you would do, and check for chromatic aberrations. You know what that is. Shoot a high contrast part of the image, and with black and white lines. There's plenty of that kind of stuff on these chips, and just look for color fringes. There was some lateral chromatic aberration in that Nikon 200 f4 picture that I just showed you, which was a bit disappointing, but yeah, it wasn't too bad. All right, let me see. One thing that you need to think about when you're looking at one of these lenses as to whether or not it'll be good for short focuses is it mechanically going to be okay? Does the focus ring stay in position, or is the whole thing loose and drifty? Do you have adapters for everything you need? Some of the lenses are hard to find adapters for, especially if you've got old Lomos or something from Russia. So just make sure you know what you're getting. And honestly, I would not just go buy 100mm lenses and try them to find one that would be a good tube lens. Get one of the known quantities like the DCR 250 or the Olympus 135 bellows lens. So we won't get into all of the tube lenses that are out there that are available. You probably know them, and you have the ones that you like. But there are definitely plenty of good lenses that you can use that will do your infinity corrected objectives justice. All right. So remember, the focal length of the lens is going to determine how much magnification you get. You're going to get the standard, what's stamped on the infinity corrected objective when you're at 200mm for Nikon and for Mitutoyo. The f-stop is going to control of the tube lens is going to control how bright and to a certain extent how sharp the image is and how much aberration you're going to see. Where the light enters the lens, the entrance pupil, that needs to be near the front of the lens if you're going to use it for a relay lens. Okay, it needs to be closer to you than this one, which was way out the back of the lens. The exit pupil, where the light exits, should be at or near the rear of the lens for it to be a good relay lens. Does that make sense? So the exit pupil needs to be near the exit of the lens. The entrance pupil needs to be inside the lens, preferably near the front of the lens. So as long as those things are met, I think you've got a much better chance of getting a decent lens to try. If it vignettes, it's gonna drive you crazy. Don't bother with it. And field curvature is the same way. When you see the lines at the edge on these chips that are bending around or bending into the picture, everything else is going to do that too. And these are just the aberrations that you get when the lens is not suitable for relay use. Chromatic aberration, yep. If you got a lot of that, it's gonna ruin every picture you take. So no, you're not going to be interested in it. And yeah, test for edge sharpness, and we talked about telecentricity earlier on. So you can see why there would be only a few lenses that are really, really good for what we're asking them to do, like the DCR 150, the Thorlabs ITL 200. Now, interestingly, they are not telecentric lenses, but why does that not matter? If I've just finished telling you that the more telecentric the lens is, the better it will be for a relay lens, all I mean by telecentricity is that when the light rays come out of the objective, they're parallel and on the optical axis, and the magnification stays constant because of that, and that's what you're looking for. It prevents distortion in perspective, and it's really important that those light rays don't strike the inside of the lens at odd angles. You get you get loss of contrast and softening from that, as well as these bizarre aberrations and perspective shifts, and the magnification even shifts across the scene when things are out of whack. But you can have a great lens like the DCL 150 or the ITL, which does not have telecentricity per se, but it doesn't have to be exactly telecentric to give you most of the advantages. For one thing, the objective is telecentric. It's designed to be that way. The Mitutoyos are designed that way, and that means that as long as the relay lens doesn't introduce any kind of non-telecentric behavior, the final image will be good with any relay lens that's a decent quality and meets the other criteria we talked about. So it's like, while they're not telecentric themselves, the DCR 150 and the ITL 200, they're close enough to it that they don't really influence the excellent image that's coming from the Mitutoyo. The shorter focal lengths, when you go to short focus, reduce that effect of telecentricity. So it's less important with the shorter focal lengths. Telecentricity is not quite as important at short focus, but with longer longer focal length relay lenses, it is. Okay, so other things include the astigmatism and the lateral chromatic aberrations are more noticeable when you're using the longer focal length lenses. So you can get away with a lot of this. That's why the images often have the possibility, at least, to look better on short focus if you have the right lens. But yeah, doesn't always work. All right, I'll tell you what, let's see. We've only got a few minutes left, and I haven't had a chance to say hi to everybody, and I'm about sick of telecentricity, to be honest. And I had a a bunch of notes of stuff I thought we could talk about, but I'm not going to bother. It's just, it's Tuesday night. That's not the time to talk about telecentricity. So let's just talk briefly about the advantages of doing it. If you're going to go the short focus route using one of the relay lenses that is worth using, something in the 100 to 135 millimeters that we've talked about. It's a compact setup for one thing. It's easier to mount on your system. You get lower magnification, but if you don't need high magnification, that would be a time that you would use it, because you have the potential to get much more efficient light passage, and it's a little bit more forgiving with mechanical alignment. But you are at risk of getting more field curvature, and the non-telecentricity may be a bit more noticeable in some setups. So it's for applications where you're kind of in between on the your needs. If 10x is too much, and you don't have a 5x objective, that would be a perfect time to use short focus. And or when you need a portable lightweight setup to go in the field with, though I don't recommend doing that in the field with all of that equipment, but yeah, some people do. If you're using lower NA objectives, like the some of the ones, the no-name infinity objectives that folks have been buying, they don't demand telecentricity, and they're probably better for short focus. Long focus is of course better if you need the full magnification. It's going to give you better field flatness and fewer distortions than using the short focus will. It's often more telecentric because of just it's designed that way at the full distance, and you get more control over image quality. You may not get the eye-popping sharpness at the center of the image you can get with short focus, but usually you get the whole thing looking better. It's what we mostly use for microscopic imaging at high precision, when you want lots and lots of detail, especially if you're using high NA objectives. And it's the gold standard. There's a reason we use that all the time, and use short focus relatively infrequently. So, all right, that's it. It's a cool technique. I use it rarely. I use it rarely because I'm perfectly happy with the resolution of my 5x Mitutoyo, and I've got a half magnification solution for everything, for every objective that I've got. I've got something half that strong, and it's just, it doesn't often occur to me to be worthwhile, and it's a pain setting up a different system. But if you want to give it a try, by all means do so. Now you know what to look for, what will probably be good, and what will probably not. Susan, I'm sending you your lens back, and it's a wonderful portrait lens. It's really a good all-round 100mm telephoto. It's very nicely made, lovely bright image on it. Just don't use it as a tube lens and you'll be good. Let me see who is here tonight. Oh, I'm gonna actually show you a couple more pictures while we're at it. I think there were a couple more nice ones. Yeah, this is I think this is no, that's not nice. That's actually out of focus. My goodness, I was in such a rush doing this today. I'm going to redo some of these. The good pictures are supposed to be good all the way across. I'm not going to show these. These are nasty. Yeah. Hang on. There was one nice. There we are. Yes. Hang on just a sec, guys. It was regarding my vertical rig, by the way. That camera stand that I bought is absolutely fantastic for everything I've used it for so far, except a vertical rig. That is a very vibration prone system. I need to come up with a much better way to secure that. I think it needs to be bolted to the wall. I'm not going to show you this picture either. It's a mess. This is what happens when you're using a vibrating system to photograph tube lenses for review. Let me show you this. Wonder if it'll turn sideways. I bet it will. There we go. So this was the CFI plan 10x. Shot with the relay lens was the EL. No, it was the micro Nikon 200 f4, and I think part of this is that it's not showing up in preview very well, but it will look pretty good in Lightroom. It's a bit fuzzy here, a little out of focus. Anyway, I think we'd be better off if I just looked at your names and see who's here. Let's do that instead. Let me see. I cannot find where you guys are. Let me see. I've got too many pictures open on the other screen. So how's everybody doing? Was that put you all to sleep? It's going to be a lot more fun on Thursday because we're going to get into some practical stuff. I invented something else, by the way, today, and I'm still working on the little plans for it. But have you ever tried to cut perfect circles in linear polarizing film? It's extremely difficult. Even if you draw a nice circle with a compass, it tends to, if it's not exactly right, it doesn't fit into the holder very well, and it makes it hard to glue it in place. So I needed something that would cut a perfect circle in vellum and in plastic sheeting like this polarizing film. So I came up with a plan for it, and I haven't got it ready enough to show you, but hopefully by Thursday I'll have one printed, and it's got a blade in it and a blade holder, and it goes around in circles on a bearing, and I think it'll make perfect circles. So that'll be another cool gadget to try to print. It looks like I've somehow lost the lost the whole browser that had you guys on it. I hope I didn't turn the whole thing off. I don't think so. But yeah, I really have no way of knowing if I'm still streaming, because yeah, the browser is closed. I guess I can try logging back in. That's what I'll do. If I'm talking to myself, it'll be a bit embarrassing, but not as embarrassing as having cut everybody off. Let me see. I don't think I've ever done that before. Of all of the crazy things I have done, yeah, it says I'm still talking. That's a relief. Okay. I don't know how I was going to explain that one. Yeah. So, how's everybody doing then? Harold signed out and right back in. Let me see. I can't tell if you guys were yes, you were hearing. Okay, so there's a question or a comment from Joseph. With a 100mm tube lens, you're only guaranteed about 10 to 12 millimeters of clear field. The rest of your 43 full frame sensor, total gamble. And this time you lost. Absolutely, that's right. This time we lost, but it's okay. I mean, we tested it, and now we know, and yeah, we won't be using it again for that. But yeah, anybody got any questions? Let me go down and see. You are still here. Amy's here. Thank you, Amy. I think Alistair's here too. I don't know if Bud's here, but I haven't had a chance to look. Thank you so much to my bouncers. Has anybody noticed a bruise on the top of my head? It was last night, very late. I realized I hadn't set my clock and that would mess me up badly if I didn't. So I took this heavy clock off the wall and it fell on my head. Yeah, at 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's a bump up there, or a scabby thing. So yeah, be careful if you're going to change your clocks. Do it during the day. So let me see what is next. Zeno wants me to take computer classes. I don't know. I'm pretty decent with the computer. I teach people how to use the computer. I just didn't, when I was closing all the pictures, I accidentally closed the browser. I didn't know if that had cut us off or not. David Brown notes that the macro bunker looks lived in now. Does this mean you're out and about on the move again? No, I went out once this week to look for pond water because I'm jealous of Bud's pond water. He has a pond nearby and he's got more action going on under his microscope than I do, because my pond water's from before the freeze. So I need to go get some fresh stuff, but I couldn't find a pond and ran out of time. So there you go. And it's not safe to go collect pond water at night in the city. People think you're up to something nefarious, I'm sure. But do plan on coming on Thursday if you can. I am so excited about this new version of the polarizer. I'll show you a couple of the things to whet your appetite. It now has a plug and a switch so that you can get a nice clicky switch when you turn it on. I added a 1/4 threaded thing so that you could hold it with a bendy arm and position it for photography. I added knobs so that you have to take it apart to put your slide in. Everything is more compact than it was last time. Same amount of light though, and much less prone to bits falling off of it. And it has a retarder plate, a wave plate, as well as 2 polarizers, a diffuser, and the specimen layer, which can take a large or small slide, a 25 by 75 or a 50 by 75. So the large or the large or the regular size. So you can make your crystals on whatever you normally do and just drop them in here, put the thing back together. It takes about 10 seconds. Screw the thumb screws down and Bob's your uncle. You can stand it up on the edge and the slides won't move. Yeah, it's fantastic. The electronics will all be cleaned up on the inside. You won't see any wires. Of course, there'll be a layer of filters in there. So if anybody's interested in getting one of these, you better tell me quickly, because I'll get sick of making these very quickly. They have to. The printer has been going again non-stop for a week because there are 9 pieces to this, and yeah, they all have to be precisely done for them to fit together. That was what I invented, by the way, was each of these little rings will only, hang on, I've got my screws, I put them back in, will only fit inside these posts in one orientation. You see the little tiny nubbins? There's 2 on this side and 1 on this side. If they aren't exactly aligned, that might be easier to see, then they won't fit into the grooves on the posts. Yeah, pretty brilliant, I thought. So I talked about this to the Pazoom group. I think it was the Pazoom group. It might have been after Stack last week. And I asked what people thought about the method for rotating the polarizer. In the past, I had a ring that you could use your finger to turn, but it meant it had to have a door on it, and it was a messy thing. This, you just take the tip of a pen or anything pointy, and you put it in the slot, and there are nubbins on the rings, and they turn. People didn't like that, but they hadn't tried it, and I've been trying it, using it a lot, and it is so much easier than trying to do it with your finger. You just do it with a pen, and yeah, it's very slick. You'll see. You'll see. I'll show you on Thursday when we get it all put together. I'll show you all the steps, the new tools that that I'm using to do my inserts, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll even, you know what? I'll make some fresh crystal slides, and we'll actually give it a fling on Thursday. I'll show you how it works. We'll turn it on and look at some birefringent crystals. You've got to have one of these. I know that you're just salivating over it. They're yeah, they're special. Does anybody know who won who won these things from the competition in December? I've lost my piece of paper. I know that Paul is owed one of these, but I can't remember who the winners were. I'll find it though. If you're one of the people who won, don't lie now and make it up. You've got to actually be one of the winners. And tell me so that I can send it to you. Okay, we're out of time. It's 9 o'clock. It's 13 seconds to 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great rest of the week. Please come Thursday if you can. And Patreon folks, see you on Saturday at Pazoom. Other than that, don't forget competition. It's, what is that? Read the thing on the website that'll explain it. There's a Patreon post coming out tomorrow with some more information on it. And yeah, until then, have a good evening. Sorry that was a bit dry tonight. It was one of those topics. All right, see you next time.